We've come to the point in the videography filmmaking world where gimbals are no longer a "do I really need one" item, but rather a "which gimbal is right for me" piece of gear. I use gimbals all the time for a variety of video projects, and it's one of those tools that when I think of a shot that would be better executed with the gimbal, then I'm happy to have one in my kit. There are a bunch of different options on the market, and they all have their key differences. So today I'm going to run through 3 of the top gimbals on the market, 2 of which are brand spanking new. We have the new DJI RS3 and the DJI RS3 Pro, both new for 2022, and the RSC2, which came out back in 2020. Unfortunately, we do not have that with us right now, but we will incorporate it into this video. So let's take a deep dive into which of these gimbals is right for you, which gimbals I would personally buy, and why. Now, full disclosure, this video is sponsored by DJI, and they have sent me the DJI RS3 and 3 Pro, these 2 right here, for the purpose of this video. So without further ado, let's get into the video. First up, let's discuss the weight and payload of these gimbals. I'm not the strongest human, so this is very important to me, obviously. The RSC2 and the RS3 both weigh in at 1.3 kilograms, while the RS3 Pro weighs in at 1.5 kilograms. Now, how significant is that 0.2 kilograms weight difference? Well, 0.2 kilograms is kind of the same weight as like a roll of nickels or 80 pennies or 4 Pop-Tarts or an adult hamster. Now you know. The payload on both the RSC2 and the RS3 is 3 kilograms, while the RS3 Pro can hold up to 4.5 kilograms. And this is one of the more important differences between these 3 gimbals. So for most shooters out there like me, I'm almost always using my Sony mirrorless cameras like the a7S III, my a7 IV, a7C, etc. So all of these gimbals can handle that. But if you're a videographer who's shooting with a larger body, such as a Red Komodo or Blackmagic Pocket Cinema at 6K or Sony FX6 or 3, then you're 100% looking at the RS3 Pro. In fact, if this is you, you could probably stop watching this video right now, but please don't. But that's your deciding factor really, because only the Pro can handle that weight. Now, one more note on these heavier bodies is that if you're in this realm, then I would also look into the Ronin 2, but that's a different conversation entirely and for a different day and a different video. Next up, let's discuss the construction and design of these gimbals. So the RS3 Pro is made of carbon fiber, which is lighter and stronger than the aluminum alloy body found on the RS3 and RSC2. Now, I know the naming of these gimbals is confusing, but think of the RS3 as a newer, upgraded version of the RSC2. And that's why they're both constructed out of aluminum. And then think of the RS3 Pro as the successor to the RS2, which is why it's made of carbon fiber. One interesting note that I learned from Brandon Lee's video, and we did test this out ourselves, was that with the carbon fiber arms, adjusting the balance along the rails seems to be much smoother on the carbon fiber texture as opposed to the aluminum alloy texture, and this is most likely due to the Teflon coating that they put in the carbon fiber arms. So it's not a deal breaker, but it's an interesting note, and it does make a difference. You can make those minute adjustments much more easily. Now, the RSC2 has a foldable design, so packing it up into like a backpack or a gear bag is pretty convenient. That being said, the RS3 and RS3 Pro have a removable battery and handle, so it can break down into a pretty manageable size as well. And there are a couple of other benefits with this removable battery and handle, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Now, another big difference on the newer gimbals is the new automated axis locks, which gives you exactly what it sounds like essentially. So up until now, to lock the axis on these, or the axes on these gimbals, you'd have to flip all of these little switches on each arm to essentially lock it in place. Now, the newer RS3 and RS3 Pro now have automatic axis locks. Seriously, look at this. So say I'm running around shooting, but all of a sudden I'm in between takes and I don't want the gimbal flying all over the place while I reframe my shot. So I simply press the power button just once and it physically locks all of the axes in one go. Just listen to how satisfying this sound is. So this goes hand in hand with what they're calling one-tap launching. So with the gimbal completely off, I can hold the power button down and the gimbal will automatically then unlock itself and self-balance the gimbal. And given that my camera and lens setup hasn't changed since the last time I used it, it can do it all itself.
That's so hot.
So same thing in reverse, essentially. If I want to power down, I just hold down the power button and it automatically locks all the axes in place again. Let's talk about the stabilizing algorithm. This is essentially all the math that's happening behind the scenes to make the gimbal move as smooth as possible. In the RSC2, we have the 2nd gen RS stabilization algorithm, but now with the RS3 and RS3 Pro, we have the 3rd generation. So what's the difference?
Although I don't have the RSC2 or RS2 to test it against, I was really impressed with the footage captured on set. The smoothness was top notch. I truly don't have anything bad to say about it. There was no hesitation with the gimbal moving into different modes, and it was overall a seamless experience.
There are also some differences with the built-in screens on these gimbals. The RSC2 has a 1-inch OLED black and white display that is not touchscreen. So really, it's just used to see and change some gimbal settings. The RS3 and 3 Pro both have 1.8-inch full color OLED touchscreens with a much more user-friendly interface for changing settings and such. Personally, I find this much more intuitive, obviously touchscreens are, and easy to use over just the wheel-based maneuvering on the RSC2. If you connect DJI's Raven Eye image transmitter device, you'll be able to see a live feed from your camera on the touchscreen on the RS3 Pro. The Raven Eye also unlocks a feature known as Active Track, which you've probably heard of if you've ever flown a DJI drone before. Active Track is a feature that actively tracks a subject, so they are always in frame. On the RS3 Pro, you can select your subject in the center of the frame by tapping on the front button of the gimbal once. From there, you can adjust the follow speed right on the touchscreen. While the Raven Eye works on the RS3 and RSC2 as well, the live feed function does not work on the gimbal itself and will require a phone to get it set up properly. When it comes to connectivity, the RSC2 uses a shutter release cable to communicate with the camera, so it'll run from the camera to the gimbal itself. And with the new RS3 and RS3 Pro, DJI is finally introducing wireless Bluetooth control. Now this is so clutch for in-the-field shooting, especially in crowded places where even the smallest cable honestly gets in the way of a shot. I won't go into detail about how to actually connect your camera with the gimbal itself, but it is pretty straightforward, and once it's set up, you have control over the record function on the camera. To the best of my knowledge, if you want to change your settings like aperture, ISO, and shutter speed, you still need to use the camera control cable and pair the gimbal with your phone. The new RS3 and RS3 Pro both have physical switches on the right side of the gimbal where you can toggle between follow modes such as pan follow, pan tilt follow, and FPV mode. The FPV switch can be configured to be a custom mode as well. So on the RSC2, we tap the M button to toggle between modes, which isn't any more difficult, but it's nice to have a physical switch so I know which mode I'm in and which mode I'm switching to. Now, the RSC2 does all of this funky folding and transformer type stuff that makes it great for different styles of shooting. That being said, the new RS3 and RS3 Pro come with a newly designed briefcase handle, and it attaches to one of the NATO ports on the side and can be angled to any degree. They also sell a twist dual handle, which allows you to handle the gimbal with 2 hands instead of the 1. All 3 of these gimbals can use this front dial here, coupled with the DJI focus motor to manually focus a lens. However, the RS3 Pro can also take advantage of the new LiDAR focusing system, which is pretty cool. And it's this tool right here. Again, we won't talk through how exactly to set this up in this video, but once it's connected, it'll give you a super accurate distance mapping. This is super helpful for manual cinema lenses, for example. Pew pew. The batteries are actually an important difference with these gimbals. So with the RSC2, the battery is built into the handle, which is not removable from the gimbal itself. So once your gimbal dies, you can't just swap out batteries like you can on these guys. So that being said, the battery does last 14 hours and supports 18-watt fast charging, meaning you can get a full charge in 2 hours of charging. So that is pretty good. The RS3 and RS3 Pro have a 12-hour battery life, but the key difference here, as I said already, is that it's removable. Just like you would with your camera, you can swap out batteries all day long and and you never have to stop shooting.
One more quick note is that as of right now, the RS3 Pro can fully support RS2 batteries. The RS3 will be able to support RS2 batteries in a future firmware update, so they're working on it.
The RS3 gets a full charge in 2.5 hours and supports 18-watt fast charging, while the RS3 Pro goes from 0 to 100 in 1.5 hours, supporting 24-watt fast charging and quick charge 2.0. So if you're someone like me who's always paranoid about running out of battery life, then I would, lean towards the newer RS3 or RS3 Pro. But if you're confident in the already amazing 14-hour battery life of the RSC2, then there you go. And of course, it depends what you're using it for. Modularity. The RS3 and RS3 Pro also include a universal base mount. Now, this means you can remove the original handle from the gimbal and mount the actual gimbal portion to a slew of other mounting options, such as a car mount, a longer jib arm, or even a slider, for example. So this is definitely a pro feature, meaning that if you're just a casual user shooting weddings or events, then you may not need this level of modularity. But if you're someone who wants to take that next leap, then having the universal base mount is key. So the RS3 Pro and RS3 have dual layered extended plates right here, as opposed to the RSC2 that has a quick release plate. Now that was a lot to digest, but let me paint a picture of what using each of these gimbals would look like in a real world scenario. Okay, so the RSC2 on paper is a good introduction to gimbals in general. However, I think that it wouldn't take you very long to potentially outgrow it. So you could use it to shoot smaller scale events or corporate videos, but you're going to be limited at a certain point. There are a few little things it doesn't have, like the touch screen. I don't love that you can't replace the battery, and at the end of the day, it does have 2-year-old tech. Next, you might think, okay, well, I'll just get the RS3 because it's got the newest technology in it from DJI and it's great for small commercial video production. Whether you're shooting weddings, events, real estate, or corporate videos, the RS3 can practically do it all. It's also got that removable battery, which we love, and I think is a big step up from the RSC2. So it's not until you enter into the world of heavier camera bodies like we discussed earlier that I would then recommend jumping up to the RS3 Pro. It has the automated axis locks, but then again, so does the RS3. It's efficient for solo operators and an effective product among the Ronin series. Now, as the name entails, the RS3 Pro is the most professional model out of this pack. It can handle a heavier payload, it has the carbon fiber construction, it has RSA ports for other DJI accessories to connect with, and faster charging time for the battery. And if you don't care about any of these things, then definitely go with the RS3. But if any of these changes make a difference to your workflow, then I would definitely consider the RS3 Pro. So if you gotten to this point of the video and you're wondering, okay, but what is the biggest difference between the RS3 and the RS3 Pro? It is the payload. That's why you'll be paying the extra coin for the Pro. If you're wondering which of these I would buy for my skill set, for the jobs that I do on a daily basis, I would go with the Pro, just because I'm never gonna wonder whether it can handle what I'm throwing at it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a like down below, subscribe if you're not already, and hit the notification bell to get notified for all future videos. Let me know if there are any other gimbals you'd like me to talk about, and I'll see you in the next one. I need another coffee. Oh! You got that on video.